On my 19th birthday, my brother beat me up. Face covered in blood, shoulder dislocated. My sister just said you should sign the mortgage contract, just because I refused to be their guarantor. I dragged myself to my parents' house, begged for help, and collapsed. But when I woke up, my parents kept scolding me. What happened next? Even the police were horrified. I'm Emma, and I never thought my own family would watch me bleed on my birthday. Growing up, my older brother Jake was supposed to protect me, and my sister Maya was my closest friend. When Jake married his girlfriend Lisa, I welcomed her into our family. So when they asked me to guarantee their mortgage on my 19th birthday, I just wanted time to think. I never expected that refusal would leave me with a dislocated shoulder and blood streaming down my face while my sister coldly said, "You should have signed the mortgage contract." Jake and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. He's 3 years older than me, and Maya is 1 year older. Our parents, David and Carol, worked hard to provide for us. Dad was a mechanic who owned a small auto shop, and Mom worked as a secretary at the local elementary school. They taught us about family loyalty, working hard, and being careful with money. Save every penny you can, Dad would tell us when we got our first jobs, and never spend money you don't have. Those lessons stuck with me, but Jake always had different ideas about money. While I was careful with every dollar I earned from my part-time job at the local grocery store, Jake spent money freely. He always talked about getting rich quick and buying expensive things. Maya fell somewhere in between us, not as careful as me, but not as reckless as Jake. When Jake graduated high school, he went to community college for auto repair, following in Dad's footsteps. But he dropped out after 1 semester, saying school was a waste of time. Instead, he got a job at a car dealership selling used cars. Maya graduated a year later and got a job at a hair salon in town. I was different. I worked hard in school and saved every penny from my grocery store job. By the time I turned 18, I had saved $15,000, enough for my first year of college. I was planning to study business and work part-time to pay for the rest. My plan was to attend State University in the fall after graduation. 2 years ago, Jake met Lisa at a bar downtown. She was from the city, blonde and confident, and she seemed to love the attention Jake gave her. Their relationship moved fast. Within 4 months, they were living together in a small apartment. Lisa worked at a clothing store in the mall, but she was always talking about expensive things she wanted. She convinced Jake to lease a brand new pickup truck even though he could barely afford the payments. When Dad questioned this decision, Jake got angry. "You don't understand modern finance, Dad," Jake said. "Lisa knows about building credit and making investments." 6 months later, Jake proposed to Lisa with a diamond ring that cost more than I made in 4 months at the grocery store. The wedding was small but expensive. They spent over $20,000 on one-day money they borrowed from 3 different credit cards. I was Maya's maid of honor, and during the reception, I noticed Lisa making comments about our family. "Small-town people don't understand how to really make money," she told her city friends, but Jake's learning. After the wedding, Jake and Lisa moved into a bigger apartment with higher rent. Jake quit his job at the dealership and started what he called his own business, flipping cars. He would buy old cars, fix them up in Dad's shop, and sell them for profit. The problem was Jake wasn't as good at repairs as Dad, and he didn't understand the paperwork side of business. Within 6 months, he had lost money on most of his car deals. But instead of admitting failure, he doubled down. "We just need more capital," he told the family during Sunday dinner. "Lisa found this great house we can buy, fix up, and flip for huge profit." Lisa nodded enthusiastically. "House flipping is where the real money is. My cousin in the city made $100,000 last year doing it." Dad frowned. "Son, you don't know anything about construction or real estate. Maybe you should go back to working for someone else until you learn more." Jake's face turned red. "I'm not going to work for someone else my whole life like you did, Dad. I'm going to be successful." The argument that followed was ugly. Jake stormed out with Lisa, and they didn't speak to our parents for 2 weeks. My 19th birthday fell on a Saturday in March. I was in my final semester of high school and had been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship for the fall. I had planned a quiet celebration, dinner with my parents and Maya, then maybe a movie. That morning, Maya called me early. "Emma, can you come over to Jake and Lisa's apartment around 6 p.m.? They have a surprise for your birthday." I was hesitant because Jake and I hadn't been getting along well lately. He was always asking me about my savings account and making comments about how I should invest my money instead of just keeping it in the bank. But Maya insisted it would be fun. When I arrived at their apartment, I found Jake and Lisa dressed up nicely, and the table was set with fancy dishes I'd never seen before. There was even a small birthday cake with 19 candles. "Happy birthday, little sister," Jake said, giving me a hug that felt forced. "We wanted to do something special for you." Lisa smiled brightly. "We have such exciting news to share, and we wanted you to be the first to know." During dinner, they were unusually nice to me. Jake kept refilling my soda and asking about my college plans. Lisa complimented my hair and asked about my job at the grocery store. It felt strange, but I tried to enjoy it. After we finished eating the cake, Jake pulled out his phone and showed me photos of a house. It was a large 2-story home with white siding and black shutters, much bigger than anything our family had ever lived in. "We're buying this house," Lisa announced, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's our starter home, and we're going to fix it up and build equity." I looked at the photos. The house was beautiful, but it was clearly expensive. "Wow, that's a big step. Are you sure you can afford the payments?" Jake's smile faltered slightly. "That's actually what we wanted to talk to you about, Emma. The bank requires a co-signer for the mortgage because of my business situation." My stomach dropped. "A co-signer? It's just a formality," Lisa said quickly. "We've done all the math and we can easily afford the payments. The bank just wants extra security because Jake is self-employed." Jake leaned forward. "Emma, you have perfect credit and a steady job. If you co-sign for us, we can get this house and start building our future. And it's your birthday. What better gift could we give each other than helping family?" I stared at them, trying to process what they were asking. Being a co-signer meant I would be legally responsible for their mortgage if they couldn't pay. Given Jake's track record with money, this seemed incredibly risky. I need to think about this," I said carefully. "This is a really big decision." Jake's expression hardened. "Think about what we're family, Emma. Family helps each other." "I know, but this is a 30-year mortgage for hundreds of thousands of dollars. If something goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong," Lisa interrupted. "Jake's business is starting to take off, and I'm getting promoted to assistant manager at the store." Maya, who had been quiet during dinner, finally spoke up. "Emma, they've been planning this for months. They really need your help." I felt trapped. It was my birthday, they had made this nice dinner, and now they were all looking at me expectantly. But every financial lesson my parents had taught me was screaming that this was a bad idea. "Can I see the mortgage paperwork?" I asked. "I just want to understand all the details." Jake's jaw tightened. "You don't trust us. It's not about trust. It's about making sure I understand what I'm agreeing to." Lisa sighed dramatically. "The real estate market is moving fast, Emma. If we don't act quickly, someone else will get this house." "Then maybe you should find a house you can afford without a co-signer," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jake's face was getting red, the same way it did when he argued with Dad. "Are you serious right now?" Jake said. "On your birthday, when we're asking for help, you're going to say no?" "I'm not saying no," I protested. "I'm just saying I need time to think about it and see the paperwork." "There's no time," Lisa snapped. "The mortgage broker needs an answer Monday morning or we lose our rate lock." Maya reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Emma, please. This is really important to them." I looked around the table at their faces. Jake, angry, Lisa, frustrated, and Maya pleading. I felt like a terrible sister for not immediately agreeing to help them. "Okay," I said finally. "Let me take the paperwork home and look at it tonight. I'll give you an answer tomorrow." "Tomorrow's Sunday," Jake said. The broker's office is closed. Then first thing Monday morning, I replied. Jake stood up abruptly. You know what, Emma, forget it. If you can't trust your own brother enough to help him without analyzing every detail like some kind of accountant, then we don't want your help. Jake, that's not fair, I started to say. No, what's not fair is having a sister who cares more about money than family, he shot back. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. This was not how I had imagined my 19th birthday going. I should go, I said, standing up and grabbing my purse. Yeah, you should, Lisa muttered. Maya walked me to the door. Emma, please think about it tonight. They really need this. I drove home in tears, feeling like the worst sister in the world. That night, instead of celebrating my birthday, I spent hours on my laptop researching what it meant to be a mortgage cosigner. What I learned terrified me. As a cosigner, I would be 100% responsible for the mortgage payments if Jake and Lisa couldn't pay. My credit would be ruined if they missed payments. If they defaulted, the bank could come after my savings account, my future wages, even force me to sell any property I owned. I also looked up the house they wanted to buy. It was listed for $280,000, far more than Jake had ever made in a year, even during his best months at the dealership. With his inconsistent income from car flipping and Lisa's retail job, there was no way they could realistically afford the payments. I called my friend Sarah, who was studying finance at community college. Emma, this sounds like a terrible idea, Sarah said after I explained the situation. Your brother's asking you to risk your entire financial future for a house he can't afford. That's not normal family help, that's financial abuse. But he's my brother, I said. What if I'm being too paranoid? What if you're not paranoid enough? Sarah replied. You've worked so hard to save money for college. Don't let them guilt you into throwing it all away. I barely slept that night, going back and forth between feeling guilty for not helping my family and feeling scared about the massive financial risk. The next morning, I decided to talk to my parents before giving Jake and Lisa my answer. I drove to my childhood home and found Mom and Dad having coffee on the back porch. How was your birthday dinner, sweetheart? Mom asked. I told them about Jake and Lisa's request to co-sign their mortgage. I watched their faces change from confusion to concern to alarm. Absolutely not, Dad said immediately. Emma, you don't make enough money to handle their mortgage if they can't pay. This could ruin your credit for decades. But they're saying it's just a formality, I said, that they can afford the payments. Mom shook her head. Honey, if they could afford the payments, the bank wouldn't require a cosigner. Banks don't ask for cosigners as a formality. They ask because they think the borrowers are high risk. Your brother has never been good with money, Dad added. And from what I've seen of Lisa, she's even worse. They're asking you to risk everything you've worked for. Their validation made me feel better about my decision. I drove to Jake and Lisa's apartment to give them my answer. When I knocked on their door, Jake answered wearing pajama pants and looking like he'd just woken up, even though it was almost noon. Let me guess, he said before I could speak. You've decided to be selfish. Jake, I've looked at all the paperwork and done research. I can't take on this financial risk, but I found some information about first-time buyer programs that might help you qualify without a cosigner. I handed him a folder of information I'd printed out about alternative financing options. Jake looked through it for about 2 seconds before throwing it back at me. We don't want charity, Emma. We want family support. Lisa appeared behind him in a bathrobe. So you're really going to screw us over? I'm not screwing you over, I said, my voice shaking. I'm protecting myself from a financial obligation I can't handle. You have $15,000 in savings, Jake said. You could afford to help us if something went wrong. My blood ran cold. How do you know how much money I have saved? Jake's face flushed slightly. Maya mentioned it. I looked at him suspiciously. Maya knew I had been saving money, but I had never told her the exact amount. The only way Jake could know that number was if he had somehow accessed my bank information. Did you go through my personal papers? I asked. Don't be ridiculous, Lisa said. Jake would never do that. But Jake's expression told a different story. He looked guilty and defensive. "I saw your bank statement in Mom and Dad's kitchen last week," he admitted. "It was just sitting on the counter." That was a lie. I never left my bank statements at my parents' house. I always kept my financial information private and secure. "You went through my mail," I said, the realization hitting me like a punch to the stomach. "It doesn't matter how I know," Jake said, getting angry again. "The point is, you have money and you won't help your family." "That money is for college," I said. "It's my entire future." "College is a waste of money anyway," Lisa said. "You could make more money working full-time and investing in real estate with us." I stared at them both, finally seeing clearly how they viewed me. Not as a sister, but as a source of money to fund their irresponsible dreams. "My answer is no," I said firmly. "I won't co-sign your mortgage." Jake's face turned darker than I'd ever seen it. "Get out," he said quietly. "Get out and don't come back until you're ready to act like family." I left their apartment feeling hurt, but also relieved that I had stood my ground. Monday evening, around 8 p.m., I was at home studying for my final high school exams when someone started pounding on my apartment door. I lived in a small studio above the garage of an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, who rented it to me cheaply because I helped them with yard work and grocery shopping. Through the thin door, I could hear Jake's voice. "Emma, open this door right now." I looked through the peephole and saw Jake standing there alone, his face red with anger. Lisa was nowhere to be seen. "Go away, Jake," I called through the door. "I already gave you my answer." "We lost the house," he shouted. "The mortgage broker called today. Without a cosigner, our application was denied. Are you happy now?" I felt a pang of guilt, but I tried to stay strong. "I'm sorry about the house, but that doesn't change my decision." "Open this door, Emma. We need to talk." "We can talk tomorrow when you've calmed down." "Open the door or I'll break it down." My heart started racing. Jake had never threatened me physically before, but his voice sounded different. Dangerous. "Jake, you're scaring me. Please just go home." Instead of leaving, he started throwing his shoulder against the door. The thin wood frame started to crack on the third hit. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but before I could dial, the door burst open. Jake stumbled inside, looking wild and angry. "Why couldn't you just help us?" he demanded, advancing toward me. "Why do you have to be so selfish?" I backed toward the small kitchenette. "Jake, you're drunk. Please leave before you do something you'll regret." "I'm not drunk," he said, though I could smell alcohol on his breath. "I'm just tired of you thinking you're better than everyone else." "I don't think I'm better than anyone," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I just can't afford to co-sign a mortgage." "Can't afford it? You have $15,000 sitting in the bank doing nothing. That money is for college. College is a waste. You could have helped us buy a house, and we could have all made money together." He was getting closer to me, and I was running out of room to back up. The small apartment suddenly felt like a trap. "Jake, please calm down. Let's talk about this tomorrow." "There is no tomorrow," he exploded. "The house is gone. Lisa is furious. And it's all because my little sister cares more about money than family." Before I could react, he grabbed my shoulders and shook me hard. "You're going to help us find another house, and you're going to co-sign the mortgage." "No, I'm not," I said, trying to pull away from his grip. That's when he hit me. The punch came out of nowhere, connecting with my left cheek with enough force to snap my head to the side. I stumbled backward, shocked more than hurt at first. "Jake," I gasped. "What are you doing? Teaching you about family loyalty," he snarled and hit me again. This time his fist caught me in the nose and I felt something crack. Blood immediately started flowing down my face. I tried to run toward the door, but Jake caught my arm and twisted it behind my back. The pain was excruciating. "You're going to sign the papers for the next house we find," he said through gritted teeth. "And you're going to apologize to Lisa for being such a selfish bitch." "Let go of me," I screamed, hoping Mr. and Mrs. Henderson would hear. Jake twisted my arm harder, and I felt something in my shoulder pop with a sickening sound. The pain was so intense that I couldn't even scream. I just made a choking noise. "Promise me you'll help us," Jake demanded. I can't, I gasped. He hit me in the face again, this time splitting my lip. Blood was everywhere now. On my clothes, on the floor, dripping from my chin. I don't know how long the beating lasted. It felt like hours, but it was probably only a few minutes. Jake hit me in the face repeatedly, kicked me when I fell down, and kept demanding that I promise to help them with a mortgage. Finally, he stopped breathing heavily and looking down at me where I lay curled up on the floor. "When you're ready to act like family," he said, "you know where to find us." Then he left, slamming the broken door behind him. I lay on the floor for what felt like forever, too scared to move in case Jake came back. Blood from my nose and mouth had formed a small puddle beside my head, and my right shoulder was throbbing with pain unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Eventually, I realized I needed help. My phone had been knocked across the room during the fight, and it took me several minutes to crawl over to it with only one working arm. I tried calling 911, but my fingers were shaking so badly I couldn't dial the numbers correctly. I tried calling Maya, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Finally, I managed to call my parents' house. "Hello?" Mom's voice sounded cheerful and normal. "Mom," I whispered, because speaking normally made my split lip hurt worse. "I need help." "Emma, what's wrong? You sound strange." "Jake, he came here. He hurt me." "What do you mean, he hurt you?" "He beat me up, Mom. I think my shoulder is broken and my face. There's so much blood." There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds. "Emma, are you sure you're not exaggerating? Jake would never hurt you." "Mom, please. I need you to come get me. I can't drive like this." "Sweetheart, maybe you just need to calm down and clean up. Sometimes when we're upset, things seem worse than they are." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I'm bleeding all over my apartment." Jake broke down my door and punched me in the face multiple times. "Now, Emma, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Your brother is hot-headed, but he's not violent. Please," I begged, "just come look at me. If you think I'm exaggerating, then fine. But please, just come." After a long pause, Mom sighed. "Your father and I will be there in 20 minutes. I spent those 20 minutes trying to clean up some of the blood and figure out how to move without making my shoulder hurt worse. By the time I heard Dad's truck in the driveway, I had managed to change into a clean shirt, but my face was still a mess of bruises and cuts. When my parents saw me, Mom gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. Dad's face went white. "Jesus Christ, Emma," Dad whispered. "What happened to you?" I told them the whole story while Mom helped me put ice on my face. When I finished, my parents exchanged glances that I couldn't read. "Well," Dad said finally, "you certainly got him riled up." "Got him riled up." I stared at my father in disbelief. "Dad, look at my face. Look at my shoulder. He broke into my apartment and beat me up because I wouldn't co-sign a mortgage." "Emma," Mom said gently, "you have to understand Jake's perspective. He and Lisa have been planning this house purchase for months. When you said no, it probably felt like betrayal to him. So that gives him the right to beat me up?" "Of course not," Dad said quickly. "Violence is never okay, but you have to admit you could have handled this whole situation better." I felt like I was in a nightmare. My own parents were blaming me for being assaulted by my brother. "How could I have handled it better?" I asked. "You could have been more supportive," Mom said. "You could have tried to find a way to help them instead of just saying no." I offered them information about other financing options. "That's not the same as family support," Dad replied. "When your brother needed help, you chose your money over family loyalty." I looked back and forth between my parents, trying to understand how they could be saying these things while looking at my battered face. "Are you taking me to the hospital?" I asked. "Let's see how you feel in the morning," Mom said. "It might just be bruising that looks worse than it is." "My shoulder is dislocated." Dad examined my shoulder roughly, making me cry out in pain. "It's probably just sprained. Nothing that won't heal on its own." I want to go to the hospital, I insisted. Emma, you're being dramatic, Mom said. Hospital visits are expensive, and you don't have insurance. We can't afford to pay for emergency room bills just because you and Jake had a fight. A fight, Mom. He broke down my door and punched me repeatedly while I was defenseless. You probably said something that set him off, Dad said. Jake doesn't lose his temper unless he's provoked. I felt like I was going crazy. My parents were acting like this was a normal sibling argument instead of a violent assault. I want to call the police, I said. Absolutely not, Dad said firmly. We're not calling the police on family. Jake committed a crime. Jake made a mistake, Mom corrected. He was upset about losing the house and he took it out on you. That doesn't make him a criminal. You're going to apologize to your brother, Dad added. And you're going to work with him to find a solution to this mortgage problem. I stared at them in shock. Apologize to him for what? For being selfish, Mom said. For putting money before family. For causing all this drama. I didn't cause anything. All I did was refuse to co-sign a mortgage I can't afford. That's exactly the problem, Dad said. You're thinking like an outsider instead of family. In families, we help each other even when it's inconvenient. Even when it could destroy my financial future. Your brother's happiness is more important than your bank account, Mom said. I realized there was no point in arguing with them. They had made up their minds that this was somehow my fault. I'm going to the hospital, I said, standing up carefully, with or without your help. You're not driving with a head injury, Dad said. Then take me. We're not wasting money on hospital bills, Mom said firmly. You can sleep here tonight, and we'll see how you feel in the morning. I ended up spending the night on my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what had happened. My shoulder was throbbing. My face felt like it was on fire, and every breath sent pain shooting through what I suspected were bruised ribs. But worse than the physical pain was the emotional devastation of realizing that my own parents blamed me for being attacked. They had looked at my bloody, bruised face and decided that I deserved it for not helping Jake with his mortgage. Around 3 a.m., Maya came home from wherever she had been all day. I heard her talking quietly with our parents in the hallway outside my room. She looks terrible, Maya whispered. Jake got a little carried away, Dad's voice replied, but she pushed him to it. Still hitting her was wrong. Of course it was wrong, Mom said, but Emma needs to take responsibility for her part in this. What part? She just didn't want to co-sign a mortgage. She embarrassed Jake in front of his wife, Dad explained. She made him feel like a failure. Sometimes when men feel cornered, they lash out. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it makes it understandable, Mom said. Emma needs to apologize and figure out how to make this right. I couldn't believe Maya wasn't defending me more strongly, but at least she seemed to understand that hitting me was wrong. The next morning, I woke up feeling even worse. My face was so swollen I could barely open my right eye, and my shoulder had stiffened to the point where I couldn't move my arm at all. When I came downstairs for breakfast, my parents were already at the kitchen table with Jake and Lisa. Jake looked uncomfortable when he saw me, but not sorry. Jesus, Emma, you look awful. Thanks, I muttered, trying to pour myself coffee with my left hand. We've been talking, Mom announced, and we've come up with a solution that works for everyone. I looked around the table suspiciously. What kind of solution? You're going to help Jake and Lisa with a down payment for a smaller house, Dad said. Something they can afford without a co-signer. With what money? Your college savings, Lisa said matter-of-factly. You can use that for a down payment and then work full-time to help them with the mortgage payments until they get on their feet. I stared at them in disbelief. You want me to give up college to fund your house purchase? Not give up, Jake said. Just postpone. You can go to college later when we're financially stable. This is insane, I said. You beat me up, and now you want me to pay you for the privilege. Emma, watch your tone, Dad warned. Your brother is trying to make amends. Making amends would be apologizing and getting anger management counseling. He doesn't need counseling, Mom said. He just needs his family's support. I looked at Maya, hoping for some backup, but she was staring at her plate and staying silent. What if I say no? I asked. Then you're not welcome in this family, Jake said simply. My parents didn't contradict him. I felt a chill run down my spine. They were actually giving me an ultimatum: fund Jake's house or lose my family entirely. I need time to think about this, I said. There's nothing to think about, Lisa said. Either you care about family or you don't. If you really cared about family, I shot back, you wouldn't have stood by and watched your husband beat up your sister-in-law. Lisa's face flushed. I wasn't there when that happened. Then where were you? She didn't answer, which made me suspicious. Had she been waiting in the car while Jake came up to assault me? It doesn't matter where I was, Lisa said. What matters is fixing this situation. The situation would be fixed if Jake faced consequences for his actions, I said. The only consequence, Dad said firmly, will be losing his family's support if you don't step up and help him. Here's a tighter pass that keeps the spine in stakes. I scanned the faces that were supposed to protect me. Instead, they were holding me hostage for family acceptance. I'm going to the hospital, I said. We're not paying. Mom snapped. I'll pay. With what? Jake smirked. College money. He wanted me boxed in, either fund my care or fund his house. I walked 3 miles to the ER with a ruined shoulder and pounding head. Dr. Martinez diagnosed a dislocated shoulder, broken nose, cracked ribs, and a concussion. Not a family argument, a serious assault. A social worker outlined housing and safety options. Officer Johnson urged a restraining order and time to decide on charges. Maya called, "Don't destroy our family." Jake did, I said. The next morning, I filed charges. Jake was arrested. My parents raged and disowned me. Lisa cornered me at work. Drop it, or you'll regret it, so I added a restraining order. 6 months later, evidence photos, medical records, the smashed door cut through the just a disagreement defense. The jury convicted him. 3 years parole possible at 18 months. As they led him away, he hissed, "Family is forever." I moved, worked, took classes, started therapy. My family vanished. Years later, Jake wrote from prison, taking responsibility. I replied briefly. After release, he kept distance, stayed in therapy, got sober, found work. We exchanged holiday cards. I married Michael, finished school, built a quiet life. A decade on, we have a daughter, Sophie. My parents never apologized. Maya never called. Jake volunteers at a DV program. I still keep boundaries. I don't regret pressing charges. That night taught me this family isn't blood, it's people who respect your safety and your no. If I could tell my 19-year-old self anything, trust your instincts, protect yourself first, and don't let family be used as a weapon.